Well, hi everybody. It has been a while since I have done an author interview, but I have to say that that is because I have not read a book in a while. I've read some great books, but I haven't read a book in a while that has prompted me to reach out to the author um, to see if they would be willing to talk more about it. And I am absolutely thrilled today that I have the author of the book that prompted me to do that. You guys have seen me talking about The Road to Dalton. You know, it's hard to see this is absolutely beautiful cover. And welcome, Shannon Bowring. Did I pronounce that
Thank
right?
you. Yes, you did.
Okay.
That was it. It's kind of a crapshoot if it goes Bowring or Bowring, but she got it.
Okay. All right. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled. Well, it's not too hard, but I suppose.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I know you've been on book tour,
Mhm.
so you're back. Is
I have this week off we've been traveling around Maine. And this week we're not traveling anywhere, it's a nice little break. And I'm really excited that I could give my attention to you today. Thank you
I
for
have
inviting me. This is really lovely.
well, these are my favorite one of the best things about this little bookstagram bubble that I found myself in. Is the author accessibility, and it's not every author, but it is a lot of them who are just gracious and make a nice comment when you post a nice
Oh,
review, and you know,
you froze up on me. I don't know if I froze up on you.
oh yeah, are you there? Can you hear me?
I
There
can
we
hear
are.
you. You froze
There we
up.
are.
Can you
Yep.
hear
And
me?
I
Okay.
can. Okay. Okay. Let's
Okay.
keep going. Anyway, I'm not sure where we were, but I'm glad you are here, and we will get going. I want to tell listeners that we're going to talk in generalities for a bit, for about half of this. So in other words, no spoilers. But when we get to spoilers, because you can't talk about this book without talking about a couple of things that happen, I will warn you, if you have not read it or you don't want to know all of that, I will say sign off, come back later, all that stuff. So we will get going. I want to start with your dedication, which hit me in the gut. So her dedication says, for mom and dad who never said no to one more chapter at bedtime. Um,
Yes,
that is the best kind of parent to be. I had parents like that. I was that kind of parent. And so they turned you into a reader.
absolutely. So even before I was born, my mom was reading to me. Um, and my sister is 4 years older than me. And all while we were growing up, until we could sort of start reading on our own, every night at bedtime, we read something together, all of us as a family. Um, and as my sister and I grew older, we would start reading out loud to mom and dad. So they heard a lot of Babysitter's Club and the Boxcar Children. Um, but every single night we had that bedtime ritual. And it was just such a, it instilled such a love of reading in me and such an appreciation for stories. And
They must be
we
so
might get into
proud.
this. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
really excited. And my mom cried a little when she saw that dedication.
Well, I mean,
um, yeah.
that's okay. It's okay to make your mom cry in the best way.
Yeah. But I don't think that I wouldn't have had stories without that early introduction to them. And we'll probably talk more about this as we go through this, but I was born with two heart conditions, and so I was really isolated. I was in and out of the hospital until I was about 6. I had a couple open heart surgeries,
My goodness.
so I couldn't go out and play with kids my age. So my entertainment was reading. So thank God they gave me those books,
Right.
because that really pulled me through all of those traumatic experiences as a young kid. So it was
Um,
really it was a solid foundation. What was kind of a shaky start in life.
as reading can be, it can give us so much.
You froze up again.
Oh, geez. I wonder what is going on. All right. And you're frozen too. Are you there?
Yes, are you there?
Yep, I am here. I am here. I don't know what's going on, but we'll keep going. So
Okay,
this is your debut,
it is.
a debut novel. And first of all, Maine is surely having a moment. The state of Maine is
Yes.
having a moment in literature. And I, I know all too well from having lived in Vermont and hearing, I've always wanted to live there. That perception and reality are very different with states like
Yes.
this, especially, New England in general, but particularly the really rural states. And I love that you showed what most of a state like in Maine and Vermont are very similar. In New Hampshire, they have
Yeah.
lot of similarities. What it's like to live in a state like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really important to me to introduce readers to an area that I don't think gets a lot of airtime. Aroostook County, the northernmost county in
Right.
Maine. It's huge, and yet a lot of people seem to forget that it's there. And so I've always had this, I live in coastal Maine now, but um, ever since I've moved down here, when people ask where I'm from, when Mainers ask where I'm from, even, and I say the county, which is the colloquial way of talking about Aroostook, they look at me like they have no idea where it is.
Right.
Um, and I've always thought it's a strange experience to grow up in this really unique, beautiful place and then have nobody know what you're talking about. So when I wrote the book, I just wanted to show a different side of Maine than the lobsters and the lighthouses, which are equal, those are good too. But as you've said,
Yeah, I
the
think
state
many
is so
people
much
have.
more than that.
Right. I think
Yeah.
people have this view of the elite summer playground, which
Yeah.
it is, and the bushes and that kind of thing. And but really the way you portrayed it was so effective. And there is so much going on in New England communities right now, from the opioid
Mhm.
crisis to unemployment. And
Yeah.
I love that whether you set out to do that or if it like
Right.
let's talk a bit about, like, that's a good segue into the genesis of this novel. Like, where did when did the idea come to you and how did it blossom?
So I think the idea has been in me basically since I was born, since my parents were reading these stories to me. Um, Dalton is based on the very small town where I grew up in Aroostook County. Um, that set, so I borrowed the landscape. I use a lot of the same landmarks, but all of the characters and all of the events are fictional. So I just kind of like to give that caveat. Um, but I was so in love with the landscape where I was raised. You have these big fields and dense forests and really beautiful rivers. And but on the flip side, you also have, as you were saying, towns that are struggling. So you have some poverty, you have addiction, you have domestic violence. So I wanted to write a book that would show both of those sides of the community. Um, so I feel like I was collecting these stories, these chapters all through my life as I was growing up in my hometown. And then I left when I was 19. And then it took about a decade for me to have some distance from the town so I could check my own biases before I could actually write the town in a way that I felt honored it and honored my own experience, but also captured the reality of the place itself. And so Dalton has been in the works for all of my life, basically. So 33 years in the making.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's where your heart is then.
Yeah.
Write what you know.
Yeah, I went up to my hometown library last week on the book tour,
um,
and it was such a full circle moment. It was really incredible.
I think
And I was
might have seen
telling,
that on your Instagram.
yeah, yeah. But I was telling them that even though I left home, I feel like I've always taken home with me. And it's a nice way to feel connected to my roots, even though I've chosen not to live there permanently. Um,
Right.
like I said, I live on the coast now. I'm not part of the elite. I still feel like I'm part of this other Maine. Um, but I like to still feel connected with the rustic, but be in an area that has a little more to offer in terms of diversity
Well,
and
you're in Bath. You
experience.
said you're in
I'm in
Bath.
Bath.
Bath is
Yeah.
beautiful. My
Yeah, it
parents
is.
live not far from there, and when I visit them, my mom has a particular store she likes to go to in Bath, and we
Yeah,
go, and it's just it's beautiful. It's quintessential
it is.
Maine.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great little town. It's a nice blend of, we have a lot of working class people with
Hmm.
that work at BIW,
Yep.
but it also is a community that attracts a lot of artists and writers. And
Yes.
so it's a really nice blend of people. I work
Got
at
a
the
lot of
library.
character.
A lot of character. I work at the library, so I see a lot of different people come in.
Um,
So it's a great community. I really like it here.
well, I
Yeah.
have to say, you accomplish a lot in under 250 pages.
Yeah,
That's really, and so I applaud you for that, because
thank you.
I am one who I termed coined a term book bloat, because there are a lot of books that, like, I love good writing, but when it's just at the sake of a plot and at the sake of things moving forward, and so as I read a little bit about you, I found out you really have a passion for the short form,
Oh, yes.
right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of,
Yeah.
is that so I guess I would say, I found an article that you did on LitHub.
Yes.
And so I have the quote: I wanted the book structure to reflect the many intersections of people living in a small town. Anyone who has lived in such a community knows your story is never just yours. Everything you do and say is wrapped up in the lives of the ladies in the post office, the old guy at the tagging station, the weasel faced kid who volunteers at the rec center. There are consequences to your words and actions that ripple out to the people around you, through lines between your experiences and those of your neighbors. It was essential to me that I capture that reality in my rendering of Dalton. So,
Yes.
okay, a couple things. So I said in my review that you nailed that, because I have lived
Oh,
in that.
thank
I've
you.
lived in a little hamlet in Vermont, Paulet, for 15 years, and
Yeah.
I know what a tagging station is.
Yeah.
So, as my Boston self was like, I can't believe but it was a bucolic place to raise our daughters, and it just
Mhm.
just showed another side of life, and people who, they're talking about you, but they will also pick you up when you're down.
Yes.
They will surround
Yes.
you and take care of you, and you so I guess you did so much of that, and so many different characters. You did have a lot of characters here in a short amount of pages. Was that
Yeah.
deliberate? Did you not want to go
Um,
long? Did you cut?
well, I did cut a lot. The page count wasn't intentional, but I think part of it was this book started out as my thesis project for my MFA program. So
Okay.
I was kind of keeping it I don't remember what their page requirement was, but I was keeping that in mind. Um, and it also started out as a linked collection of short stories, all of which were about 20 pages. So it just kind of worked out organically that it was, I think in manuscript form, it was 250 pages, or
So you
maybe a little
didn't
bit
have to
less.
cut too much. I've heard of, when I talk to, have you read Fellowship Point by Alice
Not yet,
Dark?
not
Oh,
yet,
you're
but
in
it's
for a
on the
treat.
list.
You're
Yeah.
in for a treat.
Yeah.
And she is absolutely lovely as
Yeah. I've only
well.
heard good things.
But she cut, I don't know. I think the book started at 1,400 pages, or she cut 1,400 pages. I would have to go back,
Whoa.
but really, really. So you are concise.
I try to be. Um, and I think that part of it does come from, I just love short fiction in general, and I love flash fiction. If I can say something in one sentence rather than 12, I'm going to do it that way.
It's an
Um,
art form.
well, I appreciate that.
No, it really is, because I work
Yeah.
with high school students
Yeah.
and their college essays, and I literally, my everything I say is cut, cut, cut.
Yeah.
Read this aloud first before you
Yeah.
give it to me. Read it aloud.
Yeah.
And there's just you can always, you got to get under 650 for the college essay, but I'm like,
Yeah.
we don't even need to be 650. Let's go for a great 550.
Yeah. No, I definitely do a lot of cutting and editing as I go. Um, and I think originally there were two stories in this collection that didn't end up in the novel form, so I cut those out, but I replaced them with a couple other ones.
Okay.
Um, so it kind of all page count wise, it was kind of all evened out in the revision process.
Well, you did. I mean, I don't feel like anything was lacking. I didn't feel like I needed more. I got everything, but I was just like, I was saying to a friend, like, God bless the authors who can do this. Anne Patchett's book is the same way. I was like, she's under 300 and I'm not yearning
Yeah.
for more. Is perfect.
Yeah.
Not that I don't love tomes. I'm not like criticizing long. I do love a long book, but this was,
Yeah.
it's nice to, okay. We're moving on to spoiler territory here, folks.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about characters and things that happen. And so I don't want anybody getting upset. So here we go.
Here we go.
So here we go. So when I talk about the Bridget storyline, if you've read this book, we have one of the main characters. The book really pivots off a horrific death in the community. And it is Bridget, the character, takes her own life. And she is a young mother who was suffering from postpartum depression. This is not, ripped from the headline. I mean, this is real life. It is raw. The book is raw. So there's a lot of foreshadowing of this.
Yeah.
Yep. And you do it beautifully, because as I started reading, and you're like, I was picking up on her expressions and her demeanor and the new baby. And like people just like, something's not right. But then as I got to that scene, and I said to myself, I'm literally saying to myself, and I had like goosebumps. I'm saying, she's not going to do this. She's not going to do this. It's not going to happen. And then it happens. I have to say, I thought something, like you weren't sure whether it was going to be the baby or, is it Sophie? Sophie.
Yep.
Sophie's my middle daughter. So so there was
God.
fear. Yeah. No. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, Sophie's okay. But then, so let's talk a bit about this.
Yes.
How did you decide on this storyline? And did you ever consider a happier ending, like her surviving and recovering? And
so I have had Bridget and her husband Nate in my mind for many, many years. And it's one of these, I've always known that this is how Bridget dies. And so so that was kind of the center. I don't typically plot out what I'm writing, but in this one, I knew that was what happens in the middle of the book. Things led up to it, and things, happened after it. Everyone had to deal with it after the fact.
Right.
So
it's a domino effect in a community.
It is
collateral damage. Like there's a lot. I'm not saying everything that happens, but there is like a car
No,
accident.
it is. That's an intentional. Yeah, that was an intentional structuring and just showing that everything is connected. Just like in a small town, all your stories are connected. In this book, everything is connected. So I'm glad you picked up on the foreshadowing. In each chapter, I kind of say, oh, Bridget looks tired. Maybe she's just tired because it's a new baby. But I think for a reader like you who's paying close attention, and probably for a mother, you're picking up on some things that other people aren't picking up on. So I knew that was going to happen. I've always wanted Bridget to survive, but I have always known that Nate was a very young widower with a daughter. And so I just, in writing the preceding chapters, I was getting to learn how it was happening. And writing Bridget's chapter was one of the hardest things the hardest thing I've ever written.
Oh, it was, you did it well. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat a horrific incident like that, but it is like one of those things that just, you just, and these things happen. These things happen. The way that everybody else tried to pick up and carry on and support and like didn't and also like why didn't somebody notice?
Mm.
And the doctor, um,
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name.
Dr. Haskell.
Dr.
Yeah.
Haskell, his story, like there's so many important storylines. I
Yeah.
and it's just, and like I said, in such a economy of
Hmm.
and pages and yeah,
Yeah.
his story is beautiful too. I mean, there's
Thank
just
you.
ah,
Thank you.
I can't fit
Um,
it all in. There's not enough time.
I know. Can I skip back to you said like nobody sees the signs. What did you say something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another thing where I wanted to do that very intentionally because unfortunately there have been some people that I know in my hometown who committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always after the fact. How did we not see the signs? And I think
Yep.
that's not just, that's not specific to where I grew up. That's specific to everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That is always what happens in a tragedy like that. You think, how did I miss it? And so even though I have the foreshadowing, I tried to be subtle enough with it that what Bridget does could shock the reader as much as it shocks the town.
Right.
And I have had a lot of people tell me, like what you said, is it going to be the baby or is it going to be Bridget? And I could not have it be the baby. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
No
I
way.
mean, it's just yeah, that would have been a lot. Not that this isn't a lot,
Yeah,
but just the way you wrote the
it is.
scene and the sink and the water and
I know. Yeah,
but
it
yeah,
was.
I don't think you have to be a mom. You just have to be human
Yeah,
to know
yeah.
but it's wow. I was talking with my middle daughter about it. And I think my oldest daughter, we were in a car and I because I was talking about the book multiple times and I mentioned the book on the podcast and I just
Yeah,
said, "Oh, it's gutting. It's gutting."
yeah.
And yet, like I just said about another book I just read, Juno Loves Legs,
Mhm.
the line in life between devastating and beautiful is the flip side of a coin.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
and
that's what's here. Like, okay,
yeah,
so how do we pick up and carry on? And watching
exactly.
everybody like rally doesn't feel like the right word, but support and
Yeah,
coddle Nate and Sophie, and then everybody else trying to like figure out where did they fit in, and again, what did they
right,
miss? And um,
right. Yeah, and just even on a prose level, the devastating and the beautiful. Even though that chapter was the hardest to write, I also feel it's some of my best writing I've ever done. And
right.
so when I go on these book tours, I can't share the best writing I've ever done. So that's why
Right.
I always
Are
mention that.
people on the book tour we were talking about that before, like, oh, you don't, it's really hard to talk about. That's
Some
why
of
we
them have read it and some of them
okay.
haven't. So I really have to skirt the line of saying,
Ugh.
something, there's an event in the middle
Yeah.
of the book, but I can't, and I can touch on mental health and all that goes along with it, but it doesn't really make sense to the reader unless and until they've read that scene. And so that's why I was so relieved when we decided we're going to finally talk about it, like we
Yeah.
can finally talk about what the book's about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A month
Because
after it
to
came
me,
out.
it's like what not worth doing it if you don't. There's ways to get around this.
It's
And
been tough. Yeah.
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 Um, okay. Another very unique part, I had to, there's so much to talk about, but in picking
Mhm.
specific characters, Bev and Trudy.
Yes.
Their relationship is very interesting. I've never seen it done this way before. So we have two women who are in
Yeah.
love, but in committed relationships with men. Um,
Yes.
and their husbands, like significant other, they know it and they
Hmm.
accept it. So where is tell me about this? I mean, it's
Yeah. So Bev and Trudy are interesting. And part of why is because when I first started writing them, I just thought they were best friends. Um, but the more I was trying to write about them, the less it felt natural and it just didn't feel right. And so I kept having this thought in my head, are they more than friends? Are they? And so I thought,
wow.
no. But then I thought, listen to what your characters are telling you because they know better. And as soon as I leaned into it and I started writing them as more than friends, I'm like, oh, this makes complete sense. And it is interesting to be in this little town in 1990. Um, you know, more working class, more conservative than is around today, probably.
Mhm.
But their husbands do in their own way accept it. And part of that is just, I don't know if you had the same experience in your small town, but these like open secrets that people know, but people don't talk about.
Mhm.
And just like in my small town or any small town, you don't really talk about the deep emotional stuff. Like as you were saying earlier, everyone's going to be there to lift you up and help support you, but they're not going to sit down and have a heart to heart with you about your romantic feelings with your friend. And so you have these lives on the surface, and then you have the
They
really
just kind of
lives
skate
underneath.
along. It's like everybody knows, but nobody talks about it.
Exactly. I think that there are people in town who know it and don't like it, but both families have garnered enough respect in town
Mhm.
that people kind of leave them alone. Trudy being the librarian, Richard being the doctor, Bill has a good position at the retirement village up until she can't work there anymore to take care of Sophie.
Right.
So I think part of it is just that small town ethos of we know it, but we're not going to talk about it.
Mhm. And that's
Um,
a very, pardon my, I mean, I can say this because I'm from New England. It's a very Yankee
yes, it is.
mentality.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely, we
It
always,
is.
I mean, my daughters call my parents like good old Yankees. Like we just
Yeah.
accept it. We don't say anything about it. We
Yep.
carry on.
Yeah. We might not agree with it, but we're just,
Right.
whatever.
Yep, exactly. Well,
Yes.
there's just so much, um it's raw, it's real. These people are like, we've all encountered people like this. We've all been through, know people who have gone through stuff like this. And it's just, um, you don't handle it with kid gloves. Like you don't shy away from the ugly stuff, but you also, um, like I was just saying, there's tenderness and redemption, and the end. Oh, I won't say the endings. It ends so. I'm like, okay, it ends beautifully.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
and I don't know how many times if you like had to think about that, or if the ending was like, I know some authors will say, oh, I knew the ending and I just had to write towards it.
It did not.
Yeah.
I knew that it was going to end with a party. Kind of,
Yeah.
you start with New Year's Eve and you end with this other party
Yep.
at the end of the same year. Um, and I always had it kind of ending with him turning back towards Sophie, but I had a lot of help from one of my Stone Coast MFA program mentors
Mhm.
to get the scene right because it either felt too heavy-handed or too light-handed. So that revision process took quite a while before we did it. And my last line is just like, oh, that's the last line that should have it's existed all the time. I just couldn't find it. But then there it was.
Oh.
And that mirrors another line of prose in Bridget's chapter, which
Mhm.
was my mentor helped me, make the connection.
You had
So
good
that was a
people
great
helping
resource.
you. We were talking
I
earlier
have,
before we started recording that this is published by Europa.
yes,
And they're great publisher. They publish some
great.
great titles. I'm reading the postcard. Sophie and I are reading the postcard right now for Generations podcast. Have you read that?
Yeah.
Have you
Not
read it
yet,
yet?
because I've been promoting this
Yeah, yeah.
and working on the sequel. And so I haven't had as much time to read other people's books as I would like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, don't miss it. It is, and
Oh, I
but
won't.
you're saying Europa is just they get great authors, they're a great publisher, they're nice to work with. So
Yeah.
um so
Yeah.
as we start to round out, I know it's sometimes this is taboo and you don't have to answer it. Some authors love to, some authors don't, but or do you have another project in the works?
Yes. So I am working on the sequel
Okay.
to The Road to Dalton.
Oh, there's a
Um,
sequel. That makes me so
there's a sequel.
happy.
I started writing it. So after we got this whole publication ball rolling on this one, I took a little bit of a break from
Mhm.
Dalton and I started writing a separate novel that took place in Maine, but more along the Kennebec River,
Mhm.
with different characters. But after I got the galleys for The Road to Dalton and I was going through edits, I just thought, oh, I'm not done yet. I need to go back. So it's kind of like my actual experience with my hometown. I just keep getting pulled back in. So I started writing the sequel in December,
Okay.
and I finished the first draft about a month ago. My agent has seen that first draft, sent back some suggestions, and I'm trucking ahead with revisions on what she had suggested.
Oh, I'm
So
excited. I know a
I'm
lot of
excited.
people are going to be. Thank you for sharing that with us. I know sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, no, 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 but
Yeah.
that is good news. That is very good news. Um, okay, I had told you this was coming. I always
Mhm.
round out my interviews by asking you to share some books that you have loved, or that you anything that you
Yeah.
recommend, that you just read, authors that are your go-to,
Mhm.
whatever you want.
Okay. So I'm going to give a couple, and they might kind of jump around, but that's just my train
Okay.
of thought. Winesburg, Ohio is pretty, if you've read it, you can tell there's a heavy influence on my own work.
Okay.
Um, I love that even though it was written like 100 years ago or whatever, it feels so real to me.
Right.
And I love that it has that structure where you could read it as a short story collection or as a novel.
Okay.
Um, so I love that.
Okay.
The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivy is one that I go back to again and again
I love
because
that
she's
book too.
so
Want to
good
talk
with
about
sense of
atmosphere?
place. Exactly. It's like I feel like I'm in the Alaskan wilderness when I read that book.
Yep.
It's incredible. Um, on a similar note, Winter's Bone by Daniel Woodrell in the
Okay.
Ozarks.
Okay.
I really love that one. Really great. We've been talking about economy of prose. He can accomplish so much with just one sentence to put you in this place. Um, and I also love Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. That's one that I
Oh,
feel,
okay. I saw you. I don't know.
yeah,
You
I've
recommended
had a
that
few
on
lists. Yeah.
or something. Yeah. Yep. I have read that. Have to admit, I struggled with it. Not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
that's okay.
But there's a lot of, well, it's very atmospheric. There's a lot. I just
Yeah.
felt a little bit lost at times. I was kind of,
Yeah.
but I know a lot of people loved that book. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
did.
beautiful.
And I'm gonna jump on the bandwagon, but Morgan Talty, talk about being from Maine. Night of the Living Res is incredible.
That I have not read that. I love it
Yeah.
when the authors I talk to recommend books.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. So okay. Night of the
Very
Living
good.
Rez. Yeah. Well,
Night
I'm
of the
sure
Living
it's
Res.
hard
Yeah.
for you to not be able to be reading right now. You can only there's
It's
some
really
it's
hard.
interesting. I talked to an author who said, who was it? They said, I don't read a lot when I'm writing
Yes.
because of being influenced. Do you feel that?
I do feel in some ways it's good, right? If I need like an infusion of how do I set the reader up to think one way and then do
Right.
something different, I'll read an Alice Munro short story or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that has been my experience for the past few months. It's like I like to read the same sort of stuff I'm writing.
Yep.
And so it's a little too much at times. So I tend to find myself lately gravitating towards nonfiction, true crime in
Oh,
particular,
that's perfect.
because
Yeah, you can do. Yeah,
it's
there's a lot of.
it's so yeah, it's so different. It's a good, but yeah, I haven't been reading even half as much as I would like to be reading this year.
Well, writing is a demanding
It is.
occupation. I mean, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine just writing my reviews. I feel like it's, but
Yeah.
well, this has been delightful. There is nothing like loving a book and then finding out the bones and
Yeah.
talking to the author and the genesis and all of that. And yeah, so The Road to Dalton, it is out. When did it come out?
June 6th.
June 6th. Okay, so it has not been out
Yeah.
there that long. Also, let's just talk about this cover. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. Is this did you pick this or?
So I'll give you the story behind that. I did not pick it. However, when I was writing the book, anytime I mentioned Nate Thoreau's farmhouse or Alice O'Neill, it's kind of what I had in mind.
Right.
And there is a picture that either I or my mother took from a canoe trip on the Aroostook River that looks almost exactly like this in my hometown. And so
Okay.
when I was writing those scenes, that's what I had in my mind, which I didn't tell anybody.
Okay.
And so when the Europa team came back to me with this design, originally it was a lot of different colors, which didn't feel very Maine. But once we got to the green, I thought it's the picture that I've had in my head this whole time. So it was another one of those serendipitous
Yeah.
full circle moments. It still kind of gives me chills when I think about it.
Oh, it's one of the
Yeah,
best covers out there. And Europa does the inside
beautiful.
flap,
Yep.
which is
Yeah.
great. And so I
Yeah.
just noticed on the front cover, I will round out with this, that one of the books you recommended, Morgan Talty, who wrote Night of the Living Res, her blurb is
His.
paved with beauty, grace, humility, and love, a triumphant work that reminds us what literature should be.
Yeah,
And I
he was
can't think
very
of
generous with that.
Oh, well, I mean, she's right. She's right. She's
Hey,
absolutely right. And thank you. Thank goodness we
thank you.
got through this without another blip. I don't know what is going on with Wi-Fi or whatever it is, Zoom, but we made it. And you made my day, Shannon. I would love to think that sometime when I am in Maine, I have so much family in Maine that like something bookish would be happening,
Yeah,
or that I would end up seeing you. But I will let you
absolutely.
know when I'm there. It would be fun to meet for coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, your parents aren't far from me.
Yeah,
So
we're right by
I
they're
would
right by
love
the
to make that
Bowdoin
happen.
campus. So yeah, I'm always trolling around Bowdoin when I'm there. I love going over there and looking in their
Yeah.
archives, and
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite places. So
Yeah. It's
anyway,
pretty good.
all
Thank you
right.
so
Well,
much. This
oh
has
my
been
gosh,
awesome.
it's been wonderful. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. And we will look forward to the sequel.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so
Thank
much. You
you.
have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, Shannon.
Bye.